Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of Future Proof, the podcast where we decode how founders and execs are working smarter by using systems automation and AI. If you're looking to future proof your business, you're definitely in the right place. And before we dive in with Monty today, if you're a founder, leader, C-suite exec, and you're feeling the pressure to grow faster with leaner teams, we're constantly developing new cutting-edge AI solutions. We call them micro solutions. Last week alone, we helped a client save over 30 hours just with their sales team alone. So if you want to see where AI can make an immediate impact in your business, we do free 30-minute, no pitch collab calls. Just look in the show notes and you'll see the link. But let's jump into today's guest. I can't wait to get started with Monty Fowler from 6’s. Monty, welcome. Thanks for spending this time with us.
My pleasure, Brent. Great to be here.
Yeah. This is going to be exciting. If you're a founder or CEO, please pay attention. This one is going to be different. Monty, let's start with your background. And I want to leave plenty of time. We got to get into your book.
Sure.
But let's talk about your background and then 6’s.
Thanks. So I started my career actually as a network engineer. And, I was a techie. I was right out of the Army. I needed a career. I liked computers. I had been exposed to them a little bit in college. And I had an opportunity to go to work for a consulting firm that did network engineering. And they taught me on the job. I read a few books and got good at it. I spent the first 5 years of my career as a IT director for two large architecture and engineering firms. And then I had an opportunity to go to work on the vendor side. I went to work for a software company called Wall Data just before Y2K. I was a solution engineer back then. And about a year and a half into my journey, I realized that as an SE, I was really doing all the selling and I was getting none of the money. So I mentioned
I've been in a different scenario, but I've been very similar. I get that.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
So I was feeling a little puckish one day and I mentioned it to my VP of sales and he challenged me. He looked me in the eye and he said in a not HR acceptable way today, he basically said, "Hey man, why don't you just get over yourself and take the leap and go into sales?" He goes, "If you want to do it, I'll make it happen." And he did. Long story short, that person became my mentor. We became best friends. And over the last 30 years, we've worked together at 6 different companies. We've started 2 companies together, and he's currently a part of 6’s. So that worked out really well for all of us.
Kidding.
But I've spent my entire career working in startups. My buddy Steve got me involved in my first startup in 1999. Well, we sold that to BMC Software for $100 million. And, it's almost unfair to have your first startup be a home run because you expect everyone after that to be as good or better.
Yeah, it doesn't really happen for everybody.
No. I've had a couple of good exits since then, and a lot of not great exits along the way. But I got the bug for startups. And I just love the controlled chaos of the startup environment. I love figuring out and creating and solving problems and, just watching things grow and being a part of that. So, as a consultant today, that's where I spend my time because honestly, that's where my expertise lies is how do we take something that's new and drive it into the market in a way that's efficient, scalable, and predictable.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. And that's what my practice area, it's called the revenue lifecycle practice at 6’s. And my team and I, that's what we do. We help founders, CEOs, and investors get it right when things are going wrong.
Love it. And real quick, before we jump into the revenue piece and really your book, which I think we're going to spend a lot of time on. The other 3 areas, right? You run revenue lifecycle. Just so everybody knows the other 3 areas that you guys offer, can you kind of just quickly hit on those?
Sure. We have 3 other practice areas. We have a corporate development practice area, which for right now is really focused internally on growing our business. But what we're doing is we're building a playbook to help other companies grow their business with some very specific types of tooling with AI heavily in the mix and all of that. Our other practice area is our strategy and leadership. That's where we do everything from helping companies with succession planning, strategic realignment, getting ready for merger and acquisition, helping with post-merger, post-acquisition or post-merger integrations, and anything really that has to do with the C-suite and the executive board level in a company. And then we've got our cyber and technology practice, which is, again, heavily focused on governance and AI. How do you deploy AI in a safe way that's going to really move the needle for your company? There's so much out there now. There's so many choices and there's so much confusion, especially at the executive level, because they typically don't have their hands on these tools every day like the rank and file folks do. And being able to guide the organization effectively today, you need to have a healthy understanding of AI, not only what it means for your business, but what it means for your customers as well, and your market, more broadly. And if you have a blind spot around that, you're really operating as a C-level executive with kind of like one hand tied behind your back.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree. We've seen it enough times that you're spot on. Spot on. So no, this is great. So now let's talk, because I am fascinated by the book that you have written, and I think if you're a founder or CEO or an exec at any level, but certainly if you're a founder or CEO, you're going to realize what Monty's about to walk you through and what his book is based on. Everyone's going to want to read this book, but let's talk about exec debt.
Yeah. So this is my book. It's called Executive Debt: Confronting the Long-Term Cost of Short-Term Decisions. And really what it's about is, in business, we make a lot of decisions every day at the highest levels of the organizations. And a lot of those decisions are strategic in nature, meaning they affect the entire organization, they affect our place in the market, and they affect our customers, right? Most executive leadership teams have a way or an approach to making these decisions that's rooted in the very beginnings of corporate America. We're talking 150, 200 years ago. And it's basically you get smart people into a room, you gather up the information that you think is going to be necessary to make the decision, you talk about it, you hash it out, you go back and forth, and then eventually you take a decision. And then that decision is operationalized by the rest of the people in the organization. And you set up a bunch of metrics and you measure and you see how it's doing, and then you course correct as you go along. Great. There are entire industries, though, that make decisions in a very, very different way. And the one I like to talk about is the aerospace industry. If you're building planes or spaceships or anything that's going to carry people, the strategic decisions that you make about those products and how those products operate and where those products go in the market literally affect whether people live or die. Because if you get a decision wrong in the building of a rocket, really expensive equipment and material gets lost potentially, and potentially human lives. You make a mistake. Our friends at Boeing right now are living through this particular nightmare right now.
Yes,
where they've made some missteps at the strategic level in their organizations, and now it's coming back to haunt them in failures in their products. And unfortunately for Boeing, a failure in their product means somebody probably dies or lots of people die.
Or lots of people, right.
Or lots of people die. So when you look at those businesses and you analyze how they make strategic decisions, they do one thing that is really the centerpiece of dealing with executive debt, and that is scenario planning, asking the what if questions while we're in that decision cycle. So let's take an example. I'm a software company. We've been doing great. We're killing it in the US and Canadian market, and now it's time to expand globally. Where do we go? We do a bunch of research. We look around and we say, okay, the EU is where we should go. Great. So we take all the people that we currently have now that have built what we've built and is successful, and now we give them a new task: figure out how to go to Europe. Well, unless you have a leader or set of leaders who have done it before, you are operating blind. You are making it up as you go along, right? You can go and find information and read books and talk to people and whatnot. But at the end of the day, driving your unique product and its unique value proposition into a new market is on you. And you have to figure it out, right?
And there might be a whole new set of rules, right?
And there might be a whole new set of rules. And if you don't ask the what if questions, you're going to hit a brick wall at some point, because something in your plan is not going to come out the way you expected it to. Right. And that's exactly what we talk about with executive debt, is when we make these short-term decisions for short-term benefit, they have long-term consequences that we almost never consider at the time that we're making the decision. So what we try to focus people on is, what is going to be the impact on your strategy, on your operations, on your culture, and on your people if you get this decision wrong. Or if a feature of that decision ends up being not what you expected. So by doing the what if questioning and then coming up with alternative scenarios that, hey, if this happens, we'll do this instead. But if this happens, we'll do this instead. And this is how we will react. By just planning that out ahead of time, when the thing does go sideways, now at least your executive team is in a mindset where they're like, okay, that thing turned out to be true. We planned for that. We need to execute this, and this. And it's so much easier to drive that operationally through your organization because the organization is teed up to react in that manner. Right. COVID was a massive global scale experiment in business continuity
planning. Deep end of the pool, no doubt about it. Yeah, we all got
it took every single business, whether it's a mom and pop on Main Street or the largest corporations in the world, and threw them into the deep end of the pool and said, so how's that business continuity plan doing, everybody? Right. And most organizations were caught completely flat-footed and had no way to gracefully shut down or pivot their operations to a different operating mode because of a health emergency. Well, we all learned that that's a crappy way to operate and we need to do better for the next time. So every company you go to today has a plan for what happens when the health department says you can't come to the office anymore. And we don't know how long it's going to be. Right. Yeah. And we've invested more importantly.
Maybe commercial real estate, but that's a whole other
Except maybe commercial real estate, right? But we've also done the other things that are important. So we didn't just make a plan. We've also backed that plan up with the right tooling, processes, and training and enablement in our organizations, right? And that's what we talk about with executive debt is, hey guys, this stuff is in your company right now. You've made decisions that didn't pan out the way you wanted them to, and they have had detrimental impact on your company. Let's figure out what those things are, and let's chart a better path forward and teach your executive leadership team how to make these decisions in the way that they should for operating in a modern.
So, Monty, walk us through the 4 pillars, right? Just at a big bucket high level, because like to me, the fascinating, we were talking before the podcast, but so many execs talk about the tech debt in their company. And when you start to talk about exec debt, it's a whole nother level, right? And it's so much more important. Yet so many companies, the major conversation you talk about is tech debt, right? So walk us through those 4 pillars so people can get an understanding about, kind of the things, the different scenarios you're talking about and how we do that. Because they make complete sense.
Yeah. And you're right. Technical debt gets a lot of airtime in companies for a couple of reasons. One, technical debt is usually very visible. You can see it. You can feel it in the product and the way the product performs. You can definitely read about it in reviews from your customers, right? And your CS team and your customer support team, they absolutely know what's good or bad with your product. They feel it, right? They feel it. Executive debt is different in the sense that it's hidden a lot of times because, again, the impact or the effect of these big strategic decisions that go sideways isn't immediate usually. Right? Typically, we'll put a big initiative in place and it takes 6 months to get the initiative off the ground. It takes another 6 months for it to kind of gain traction. And then by the time you're a year in, you might have some data. Well, guess what? By the time you're a year in, if you didn't model out the potential bad scenarios, some of those things are already happening and you don't see it. And the impact is going directly downstream into your organization to the people that have to lead the teams that do the work. So that's where we start. At the end of the day, strategic debt is manifest as strategic drift. We're going here, right? And along the way, we've got some steps or gates that we're going to go through and we're going to measure and we're going to course correct if we have to. Well, if before you get to that first gate, you've already encountered a scenario that you didn't plan for, you are already strategically drifting in one direction or another. And unless you actively recognize that you're drifting and then do the things that you need to do to adjust the plan to get everybody back in the lane they should be in, that thing is now going to branch off into its own set of challenges and problems that are going to manifest downstream in the organization. So strategic debt is probably the most impactful because everything at the strategy level percolates down through the organization. Okay. Whether it's a business process, whether it's a system that we've decided to go with, whether it's a product or a product feature we're launching, whether it's a team that we've hired and built, whether it's a region that we've moved into in the market, it always percolates down. Strategic debt is the one that we really focus on the most because it has the most massive impact across the board. Where it ends up showing up though, and where you can measure it and see it most effectively, kind of like a broken bone, right? If you got a pain in your leg and you go to the doctor, well, they're going to manipulate it, they're going to check it, but eventually they're going to do an x-ray, right? Because we want to see, do we have structural issues in there? This is exactly what happens with operational debt, because bad strategy or broken strategy always impacts the operations of the business.
Always.
And sometimes this debt actually manifests as a business process, or sometimes an entire team or department that is off the plan. They're just over here doing something. Nobody really knows what they're doing, but it's part of the big strategy. So we just keep doing it, right?
Right.
Operational debt is horrific because it's the thing that causes the other two pillars to come into play. When operational debt is rampant throughout your organization, it's impacting people, actual human beings, the people that come to the job site every day to do their job, right? Yeah. And let's be honest, most people just take it. They're just like, hey, I'm happy to have a job. I'm just going to keep my head down. I know this thing that I'm doing.
Right.
I know that this process is broken. It's garbage. It's impacting all the people over here badly. But you know what? If I say something, I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and keep doing what I've been told to do. And that mindset at the rank and file level, combined with blindness and poor decision-making frameworks at the top level, equal rampant executive debt.
Right, because you're doing this. Yes.
You're doing this. You're looking past each other, right? So leadership gets frustrated because they're like, why aren't we seeing the results? And the people who are actually trying to drive the results are like, the thing you're having us do, the process, the tooling, the whatever, the strategy, the playbook, it's not working, but they're not saying anything.
Yeah. You know what's crazy that you're saying this? I have 2 clients right now that this is happening in. That's what's so like when you told me, my head almost exploded.
Brent, it's in every company in America. I don't care if you're running an earring shop on Main Street or you're running a big telecom company. It's everywhere in every company. And then once you've got that operational debt that's landing hard on all of the rank and file employees, that's where you get cultural debt, meaning it starts to warp the culture of the company because I don't trust my leaders anymore. They're making dumb decisions. They're having me do dumb stuff that isn't working. We're not getting the results. So you start to really doubt the whole mission of the organization and the people who are leading. And then that eventually leads to talent debt, which is your best and brightest, the people that really care and really want to do good work and really want to take care of your customers. If they're operating in an environment where it seems like leadership is clueless, they're not seeing what's broken and they're not trying to fix it, I need to get out of here and go somewhere else. And it's the mediocre and lazy employees that tend to stick around because they're just happy to keep getting a paycheck and they are not going to put their hand up and rock the boat.
And they're not going to move the needle, right? They're not going to put their hand up and fix things, yeah.
But when your A players don't believe in the mission anymore, you're done. You're toast. You're toast at that point, especially in this hiring market right now. It is really, really difficult to get the talent that you're looking for and get them in the organization efficiently.
Yeah. And you and I were talking before, and I think that this is where if you have a good strategy, right, and someone's working with Aspire 6 or a thought leadership company like you guys, and they start to understand that there's a blend of, and this is where AI can help, right? But it's just but if you don't get the top part right and figure this strategy out first, like you said, you're good and have the contingency and scenario planning going. You're going to implement it wrong, right? And so, because again, what I wanted you to touch on is if you're a founder and CEO, you're thinking, all right, I probably have one or many of those problems you just talked about. And I realize that I'm fighting for talent, right? And I probably need to infuse new talent, right? And I'm not sure where. So what's your advice for them and where to start? Because right now I'm picturing so many going, wait, I have all those. I also know I need to get some emerging tech like AI into my company, but they have to work in harmony here. And
Absolutely.
So what would your advice be? Because you guys are at the forefront of putting this and giving the right advice and plan going in.
Well, at the end of the day, if you can't measure it, you can't see it. And if you can't see it, you can't address it. So the first thing we do is we try to get people orientated to identifying the pockets of executive debt that exist in the organization. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. But I think one of the best ways is using AI, right? When you think about how would you uncover the challenges that you're having that manifest as a result of executive debt, there's specific areas you can go and look. Like, first of all, how are our processes working? First of all, when's the last time we updated our enablement materials and our SOPs on our processes? Yeah, I would say if you've got a process in your organization that was written more than 12 or 18 months ago and it hasn't been reviewed for efficacy, you need to do that right now, especially with the pace of change like we were talking
Everybody
about.
listening to this, that I guarantee you, there's everyone saying we haven't updated in the last 12 to 18 months. And if they did, it's a fraction of what they really need.
Exactly.
So
Consider for a moment. Consider for a moment that every business process that we have in an organization generally has a tool or a system associated with facilitating that function.
Yep.
Well, all of our tooling over the last 18 months has gotten an upgrade. I can't think of a vendor or a tool that I use that hasn't had AI infused into it, right?
Right.
In some form, in some way, right? So that reality alone means, okay, I got to look at all of my tooling. Which of them have these new AI functions? What do those functions do? What are the risks associated with those functions? What are the opportunities for us? And then how can that help shape or change or update or even eliminate our existing processes? You have to look at it through the lens of, I've got a tool that's doing this process. This tool has changed. How should my process change in response to that?
Right.
Because unless you're changing your process, you're probably not getting the benefit of whatever those new features are in that tool or that system that you're using to facilitate that business process. So that's one area where people just fall apart, right?
Yeah.
Is they don't look at their processes. And once you can identify where the executive debt is happening, it's relatively straightforward to go and address it, because it always boils down to changing a business process, changing a tool, changing a person, changing the construct of a department or a workflow or something. So yeah, that's kind of how we start. But once you've started, now you've got to change the way you make decisions. Because otherwise you're just going to keep racking up executive debt if you keep making the decisions the same way you did.
Yeah.
So what we do is we want to teach executive leaders and leadership teams how to think in that what if mind space. I came from a family, a big Italian loud family, and my family had a very unique capability. I don't know if it's in our DNA or whatever. You tell us, like, we're going to plan a vacation. Every person in my family has a skill of being able to immediately think of all the things that could go wrong on that vacation, perseverate on it. We're like, oh my gosh, well, what if we miss the plane? And what if we don't connect here and whatever, and it's when you're planning a vacation, that can get in the way. Yeah. But when you're running a business, that frame of mind is actually quite valuable. And I would argue that you need at least one or two people on your executive leadership team who are like me. That the minute you hear an idea, my brain goes to the track of, how is that going to fail? What are the things that could cause that thing to fail? Right? Yeah. I'm not a rah-rah guy. Like, oh, that's great, let's just go. No, I start thinking about, okay, cool idea, but what about this? And what about that? And what if this happens? And what if that happens?
The what ifs and the whys. Yeah.
And if you've got somebody like that in your leadership team and they're empowered to speak up, right? Yeah. They can be the catalyst for this kind of a change. So that's one of the things we try to do, is we try to identify who on the leadership team already kind of thinks this way, but isn't participating the way they should. But once you've got a way to change that decision-making process, now you can really fix what's broken and, more importantly, avoid racking up more of this executive debt in the future. And one of the best ways to do it, when you think about it, inside of our organization, everything we do has a tool or a system associated with it. All of those tools generate data and handle data. All of our conversations that we have over Zoom and a lot of times in our meeting rooms are recorded now. So we have a transcript, right?
Yep.
All of our email communications is there. All of our ephemeral communications, I call them, our Teams, our Slack, all of that stuff is there. All of our documentation, all of our processes, Notion, where we keep all of our SOP information and all that stuff. We've got all of this documentation and information in our organizations. And we've got all the metrics and KPIs that go along with all of our business processes. We got dashboards and reports and data analytics and all this great stuff. How many executive teams are using AI to go back and utilize all of that data to help inform decisions in the present?
I would guess less than 1%. That would be my guess.
But when you think about, well, why aren't they doing it? Because every company currently has the capability to do that. I don't care if you're a mom and pop shop. running your business on QuickBooks
Yep.
and Google Mail, or you're a big corporation or anything in between. So imagine this. Imagine it's time to do our budget planning for not even budget. Let's just say we're going to do our goal setting for next year. Okay. It's early Q4. We're setting our sales targets and whatnot for next year. A lot of companies, they do this. They look at what they promised their investors. They look at what their competitors are promising, and they try to figure out what can we get out of our business next year. What they're not doing is they're not taking all of the materials that went into the last 3 years goal setting decisions and feeding that into AI and asking AI, hey, take a look at the way we made our decisions for the last 3 years around this topic, analyze the outcomes, and then recommend how we might do it better this time around.
Could not agree more. Could not agree more. Yeah.
And it's like, dude, this is just like, it's so simple and straightforward. And all it takes is just a little leap of imagination, right? I mean, and let's take AI out of it. If you engage one of the big consulting firms, a McKinsey, right, or a Deloitte, to come in and advise you on strategy, what do? They spend 6 months reading every single thing that your executive team has created, every forecast, every report, everything, right? Why do they do that? Because they want to understand, how is the business operating? How do you make decisions? Who's good at what? Yada, yada, right? Well, guess what? AI can do all of that, and it can do it better than any team of consultants.
It can.
And they can handle
I don't understand.
Structured data, unstructured data.
Right.
You can feed it anything and it will make sense out of it. This is something that we're preaching now, is that if you're leading a company today and you are not adept, and I mean adept, with prompt engineering and being able to ask good questions of your data stack, let's just call it, you are not leading well.
Yeah.
And you are damaging your company if you don't understand these tools. It's like,
right, because you're much closer to this than solid understanding. Regardless of your expertise, you're not can analyze that data to help you make better data-driven decisions, right? It's as simple as that.
I mean, how many CEOs do you know that don't know how to use email or a spreadsheet? I don't care if you run a paving company or a roofing company or you're a plumber. You have a spreadsheet and you know how to use it, at least to do the stuff that you need to do, right?
And
you know how to navigate email, and you might even know how to use MailChimp and stuff, right? So there's a set of tools that every CEO must have. I don't care what level you're at.
Yeah.
Right. AI is now one of those tools. It has to be on your tool belt, like Batman.
Yeah. And the best part, when you start to use the voice, it's even simpler. Like, there's no excuse, is my point. Right? I mean, you can talk to it. It's crazy. So, Monty, I couldn't agree more. God, I could talk to you for hours. I know we're going to do some follow-ups with you for sure. I really just feel like you've hit on something that is so needed for this audience. And I think that we can dive deep into executive debt in certain topics. And we definitely need to have you back soon to do revenue lifecycle, because there's a whole hour just on that. And so if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to schedule you, coming up pretty soon again.
I would love to come back.
Yeah, honestly, this is fantastic. Everybody that's listening to this, just take this to heart. This is one of the most new, right? Monty and I were talking about this, that no one's talking about exec debt. No one's actually put it in this. This book is a must read if you're a leader. And getting good at prompt engineering, and Monty and I, separately we can send you prompts if you need, right, to get you started.
Absolutely.
It's so easy. It's a different mindset, but it will become second nature, just like Excel. When you learn to do it the right way, the output is amazing. Go ahead.
I had a conversation last night at a networking event, and I was talking to a solopreneur, and he was lamenting the fact that he doesn't feel like he's that adept at prompt engineering. And he's like, I know it's holding me back. And he's like, I read books and I follow these different LinkedIn gurus who can tell you how to do it. He goes, but they're all so general. I need something very specific for what I'm trying to do. And I'm like, have you asked ChatGPT?
Right.
And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, have you asked ChatGPT
to help build
the best way to construct a prompt? And then he's like, no, I didn't even know you could do that. I'm like, oh yeah, ask it. It'll tell you. I said, or you can say, hey, just generally, this is what I want to do. I don't know what to give you. Can you ask me questions that'll help fill in the gaps?
It'll build the prompt step by step for you. Right. Exactly. And you know what you just said, I take for granted, because that's how I started doing it. Right. And I never thought, how when you get good at something, you just forget how you started. So that's fantastic advice. Monty, thank you for spending this time with us. I absolutely want to do a follow-up with you very quickly because I just feel like you and I could do a series together. This is amazing stuff. And I'm just so grateful for your book, for you sharing your insights. And I think for everybody listening, if you are really serious and you're a mid-market CEO or founder, you need to get in touch with Monty at Aspire 6. And we'll put all the links to go. We're going to get this one up quickly. Monty, like I said, I can't thank you enough for spending this time with us.
Absolutely my pleasure, Brent. And I look forward to the next conversation with you.
So if you're listening, and I always do for my final plug, you want to explore how you can unlock a few quick wins in AI, happy to help. There'll be links in the show notes, but make sure you check out Aspire 6. There'll be links to Monty's site, and you can jump on a call with him and his team as well. And that wraps up this episode of Future Proof. Our saying is future proof what matters in your business and automate the rest. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Monty.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.